Yeah, it says live.
Fill my eyes with that tunnel vision. No disguise for that tunnel vision.
But I don't think we might on Facebook right now.
There's something else.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to television. We had some technical difficulties,
Few
but
minutes
we
late.
are live on USC's bye week, which means we'll have a lot to talk about. And you can put your questions. I believe we are live on Periscope, Facebook, and YouTube. So you can put your questions there. You can talk about pretty much anything. USC, the Pac-12. We'll try and answer it. I'm Keely Eure, joined alongside Shotgun Spratling and Ryan Abraham. And we got Shotgun live, on time, in studio. Well done.
He was here early,
It's true.
What, guy? I had stuff to do this past week.
Yeah.
Sorry.
and he's watching the Dodgers game right now.
I know. So,
the
hey, if you're
Braves
watching us and you're a Dodgers fan, that's true dedication, and we thank you for it. So,
Yeah, dual screen. Come on, guys. Dual screen
He's got the
experience.
screen going.
dual screen, y'all
So if
can
something happens-
multitask.
Yeah, he might get upset.
He's a Braves fan, though. Don't be fooled by that blue hat. He's a Braves fan. But we will be talking about the bye week, what we saw in USC's 2 practices. One was closed for us. We will be talking about Bubba Bolden. We did finally get an update today in USC's media notes, and we'll be talking about the Pac-12 South. How did the rest of the Pac-12 fare in this week? And we'll be talking about the Trojan talent tally. Ryan, what does that exactly mean?
The Trojan talent tally. There's always talk about how much talent this team has, and I think our friends over at West Coast College Football tweeted out a top 25 list. You can follow them. I think it's West Coast CFB, but top 25 list of programs in the country that have X number of 4- and 5-star players on their roster. So basically, what that means is, if USC recruited JT Daniels, he's a 5-star according to the 24/7 composite rankings. So he's on USC's roster, he's a 5-star. Now, a guy like Jack Jones, who was a 5-star, he's no longer on the roster. Those guys don't count. So it's not recruiting classes, it's current players on the team. And USC, in their rankings, came in at number 4 in the country, which is kind of crazy. I mean, that's pretty high. You know, they're not ranked in the AP top 25. If you look at the top 3 teams, I think it was Ohio State, then Alabama, then Georgia. Those just happen to be the 3 teams in a little different order in the AP poll. So the top 3 talent-laden teams are the top 3 teams in the country according to the AP poll. USC's number 4, and then obviously nowhere near that. And I took it a step further, and so there's a story up on uscfootball.com if you want to check it out. But to check, 24/7 Sports has what they call a team composite talent rankings. I think that's the exact wording. Team composite talent. Basically, it's a list of not just the 4- and 5-star players, but 3 stars, everybody. It's some complicated formula, and they give you a number, kind of like your recruiting class rankings. They rank your current roster based on the recruiting classes in the 24/7 composite. USC also came in at number 4 on that list as well. And they have 52 total 4- and 5-star players currently on the roster. The next highest in the Pac-12 is Washington at 32. So that's 20 more players that USC has, almost a full squad of 11 offensive, 11 defensive players that are blue chip prospects, more than the next highest team in the Pac-12. And they have as many 5-stars as the other Pac-12 combined, I think -1. So it's a pretty big disparity between what USC has and the rest of the Pac-12. And then the other interesting thing, one quick thought, you look at the top 25 of the talent composite ranking. So basically the 25 most talented team in the country, all of them pretty much are ranked in the AP top 25 or receiving votes, except for a few. And USC and Florida State are the 2 in the top 5 that are 4. USC's 4 and Florida State is 5. There's other teams like Tennessee and Maryland, and there was a couple other. Yeah, so Maryland was in there. Tennessee was in there. I think that was it. There's a few. I think I got the list right here. But anyway, USC is the only team that's not in the top 25 of the talent, and not ranked in the top 25, and hasn't had coaching turnover. So you talk like Maryland, they had TJ Durkin. Is it TJ? DJ Durkin. He's suspended right now, so they had to bring in Dave Aranda. He's the temporary head coach. No, Matt Canada. I think Canada is the
I don't
temporary.
remember.
I can't remember what it was. But anyway, so they have an interim head coach right now. Tennessee, fired their coach last year. Oh, UCLA is in the group. They fired their coach last year. So they have Chip Kelly. Obviously, Willie Taggart's the new coach at Florida State. So basically, if you're in the top 25 in talent and not ranked in the top 25, you've had head coaching turnover except for USC. So I just thought that was kind of an interesting side note.
That is an interesting side note.
End of rant.
And Durant.
Well, William wanted to know, Ryan, we get that. Does that ultimately show our lack of coaching?
Okay, so in the story, I didn't say anything like, well, the coaching is terrible or anything like that. But you take what you want from that. Now, some people will say, well, it's not the right kind of talent. There's a lot of skill guys. But if you look at the offensive line and the defensive lines, I mean, there's some highly ranked 4- and 5-star guys there. It's not like, I think if you could say that under Kiffin and Sark, that they didn't recruit the lines as much. But I think Clay Helton's focused a lot on the lines, and you can look at those too. So, It's to me, it's just you have plenty of material to work with, and for whatever reason, maybe they're not the right guys. Maybe it's not, the coaches aren't doing a great job of this or that or develop whatever it is. It shouldn't be as bad as it is right now, is what And I'm not saying it's all coaching or whatever, but there's a whole lot that goes into making a great football team, and for whatever reason, USC has like the hard part of making a great football team, the talent, but not the other stuff.
And part of it is a lot of their talent that is playing, and some of the guys that are playing well are young talent. So there's a little bit of a growing curve there. The problem is that their veteran talent, particularly on the offensive line, is not playing up to 4- and 5-star production.
Yes.
So I think when your older guys aren't producing it as much as you expect from them based off the rankings and everything else, then you're going to have a hard time living up to those rankings and stuff. So I think that's been an issue for them, that they haven't got the great play from the offensive line, and that's led to them not being able to control games on the ground and different things like that, and be able to protect the quarterback a little bit more, a young guy, and do things like that. Because I think the future is bright if they can get the offensive line figured out. That's something I've said all year, and if it doesn't get figured out, then I'll still say it all year, but it'll show that. Maybe it'll show that I'm right if they don't do it all year and they still perform poorly. So you have to be able to figure things out in the trenches, and I think they've done a good job on the defensive side with even the guys that Brandon Peeling's a 3-star. The guys that are young are growing on that side. You don't see as much growth on the offensive side, I don't think.
Yeah, and I think to be fair, I think USC has developed some 3-star guys that turned them into some stuff. I mean, like Uchenna Nwosu was a 3-star dude. It's happened. It's not like they don't develop anybody, but there is a lot of talent that just kind of comes in, and it seems to get stagnant. So there's a mix there.
And the fact that you've had some attrition at certain positions because of everything from grades to off-field stuff to whatever, that never helps, obviously. Now, a lot of big programs, you get a ton of really good players that have really big egos. Sometimes that happens. But how do you deal with that? I don't think USC has dealt with it as best as they can in some situations.
Yeah.
And, not necessarily dealing with the situations that have happened off the field and stuff like that, but dealing with backfilling that position the next year or whatever it may be. And part of that might be the way the recruiting strategy has been, where you take 6 linebackers in a class, or you take 5 offensive linemen in the class. So if a couple of those guys don't work out, and you kind of figure, well, if we take 6 guys, 3 of them might redshirt, 3 of them might play, and then it's kind of a two classes of 3. But if 2 of those guys you thought were going to play, or 2 of those guys you thought were going to redshirt, either way, end up transferring out or getting medical redshirts have been an issue on the offensive line, or whatever it may be. Then all of a sudden you have a gap in the classes, and I think you've seen that in some cases too. I think that it's kind of been a confluence of several different things, but I think that's why you haven't seen USC's production follow the rankings of their recruits.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of attrition, we did get a update on Bubba Bolden as far as in the media guide. We get a media guide each week kind of previewing who USC is going to play, and then it has a list of players who are no longer part of the team. And as far as Bubba Bolden's status, it changed to no longer enrolled in the university. Now, we usually have a conference call with Clay Helton at 6 every Sunday, but that didn't happen this week because it is a bye week. So we haven't talked to Clay Helton specifically what's the official word, but as far as USC's media notes go, Bubba Bolden is no longer part of the university or the team. And on his social media accounts, apparently he's deleted everything that has involved USC. And before he I think last week posted something about USC and maybe coming soon. So the fact that that's all been deleted, it seems like it's over for Bubba Bolden and his USC days.
Yeah, we had heard from behind the scenes, Clayton really didn't say much about what was going on. It was really weird because, he played sparingly last year. I mean, he played in all games but the Stanford game because he had a knee injury, but it was mostly as a special teams guy and a backup safety. I think he had 8 tackles on the year, but, he's from Bishop Gorman High School, and coming into, a week before the season, he was announced as the starter, as going to be the starting free safety opposite Marvell Tell. We talked to him on Wednesday, which was, I was right front and center interviewing him. Newspaper guys from Las Vegas were talking about, hey, you're going to be able to start against UNLV. And then, within 24 hours, probably within like 12 hours, he didn't show up on Thursday's practice. Clay Helton just said he's not going to play in the game, and that's really all we were getting from him. He hasn't really given any updates since. We had heard behind the scenes that it was a university matter, and it was a long suspension, an indefinite suspension. So I don't think this is a surprise, but now it's at least official. Hey, he's no longer enrolled in school. And Keely mentioned the social media posts. He hasn't really done any Twitter. Like his Twitter is still the same as it was, I think, from the fall. But his Instagram, I think, was more updated, and he put something about returning soon or coming soon or something on Instagram like last week. He also from several months ago, and this just popped up on the Peristyle on the message board. I don't know if you guys saw this, but the thread was titled, "I don't think Bubba Bolden's transferring anytime soon." I think it was from like April. So he put on his Instagram like this full-on
his
SC tattoo on his leg. It's like his right leg or something, huge tattoo.
Over his kneecap.
Yeah, like really, you're not hiding it anywhere. It was this huge, and so then someone bumped the thread and was like, because he's no longer there. So it was weird. So yeah, he posted that. It seemed like it might be some sort of comeback, like didn't hear anything about it. And then everything was wiped from his Instagram account. So it's weird. And that, Shotgun mentioned attrition at certain positions. USC was super deep at the safety spot. And you had freshmen, you had seniors. It was like, everything. And then you lose Bubba Bolden. Keely Ross has the little sort of tantrum, I guess you could say, on the practice field and gets upset, and he's leaving, so he's going to be a graduate transfer when he's done. He'll play 1 year somewhere else, and then Isaiah Polomau, shoulder injury, and he's out for the season. So you're left with Marvell Tell there, and then CJ Pollard, who's just kind of been trying to get some playing time, and Talanoa Hufanga is a true freshman who's getting the start right now. So it's a beat-up position, and it was a position that was really deep earlier in the season.
Yeah, and you're going to lose Marvell Tell after this year. He's going to be gone. He's been the rock. If he gets hurt, you're in dire straits at that spot.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, there's always 1 or 2 positions where if you lose a senior veteran, that's going to hurt you. But that's going to be really bad because then you're going to have CJ and Talanoa, and if one of them gets safeties are always potential targeting victims.
Yeah.
Or targeting. Not victims, but
Perpetrators.
Perpetrators. There we go. So if one of them gets a targeting call, you're left with trying to throw Chase Williams in there, or trying to move Greg Johnson or Iman Marshall or one of those cornerbacks, Isaiah Lane, whoever it is. A Jenny Harris maybe could go back there, but you're going to be in real deep water there as far as that, because it's not like a defensive line where you can blitz into that spot and help out. If you have a young defense tackle or something like that. That's your back end. That's the last line of defense, and you're putting in young guys who don't have a lot of experience. So that'd be really tough on them. So you got to hope that they stay healthy at that position. After it looked like, if somebody gets banged up for a couple games, it's okay. That actually might be good because it'll give other guys an opportunity to play some. No, not the case anymore.
Yeah, it's going to be Nico Falla in the first Pac-12 championship when he started at center. That was like the backup to the backup to the backup. So I don't think USC wants that.
Walker actually asked, are there any other freshmen starting beyond Hufanga? And I think someone else asked beyond JT and Haman Ra, because we know obviously those 2 guys have been in. You've seen Palia Naitiote, the linebacker, got a start with Porter Gustin out. You saw, I just blanked on it. Kanai Monga has played some. You've seen some guys piece in here and there, but as far as starting, that's the only one who's got any time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, if something happens at safety, you might see Chase Williams get in there and get a start.
Could be, and he played a little bit in the first game, hasn't played as much. You've seen Elijah Griffin play some on defense.
Start,
Isaac Taylor-Stewart is now a question mark for the rest of the year maybe, because he has a significant ankle injury, so he has played 4 games. So the question is, if he comes back, how long? Depending on when he comes back, do you put him in there and burn a potential redshirt year? So he's another guy that's played some. We've had a couple other guys that have played on special teams. Devin Williams, he's got a couple snaps on offense. But as far as the freshmen, your starters has been Hufanga and the two offensive guys for the most part. And then Pallier is going to continue to work more and more into. He started that game, but when Porter Gustin came back healthy, he has not. Didn't get a bunch of snaps after that, so it'll take an injury probably for him to start any more games this season.
As far as Pac-12 South goes, Utah putting up 40 against Stanford.
Yeah.
Where Stanford didn't have Bryce Love, but Bryce Love doesn't play defense, so I don't know how much you can attribute it to that. But Ryan, you're kind of the Pac-12 guru with your podcast of champions. Were you expecting that to happen?
I did pick Utah to cover the spread, and I actually picked them to win outright against Stanford. So, so I was pretty happy about that with my pick. It's a little concerning. I got on Twitter last night, and I like when USC has a bye. It's great that I can watch the rest of the Pac-12 games. The Pac-12 podcast helped me a lot because I didn't really pay attention to other teams, but you really need to figure out what's going on with these other teams now. Like at least I do. So I feel really good going into the games. I kind of know what to expect, who the best players are, and what's going in. And Utah's just been a team that is really good on defense. They're really good on special teams, and they haven't been able to find their offensive identity. Tyler Huntley, I thought, would be an explosive player, and just they haven't got it working. They got Covey, and they've got Moss, the running back, and Huntley. They went to high school together. I mean, it was like a three-headed monster. You thought they would be good, and they just haven't been that good. They were good against Stanford on the road, and so I was, looking at that. The thing I tweeted out that maybe Keely's referring to is USC went on the road to Stanford and scored 3 points. With all that talent we talked about earlier, and Utah like nowhere near the same number of 4- and 5-star guys. They put up 40 on that same Stanford team. And I know, people are like, well, they didn't have Bryce Love. Bryce Love's rushed for over 100 yards once this year. That was against USC. He's had more than 20 carries once this season. That's USC. Stanford played Stanford football in one game this year, and that was against USC. That's the only team they were down in the first quarter of every game except the USC game. They were down to UC Davis in the first quarter. So this is
Powerhouse UC Davis.
Powerhouse UC Davis. So so there's definitely some concern there. So I started a thread on the Peristyle. We started some tweets and stuff. And there's no transitive property when you're talking about college football because Washington State, Utah lost to Washington State the week before, and USC obviously beat Washington State. But just that being unable to score points against a not very good Stanford defense, I think was really concerning. And it was the second game of the season. For whatever reason, this veteran offensive line was not playing well at all. JT Daniels was okay, wasn't great, but he was getting beat up a lot. So we'll see. I mean, we'll see as they progress. But we're not seeing this team kind of advance. And it's a little concerning because going into the month of October, you want to talk about the Pac-12 South. Now you're facing a bunch of Pac-12 South foes. Colorado comes in undefeated. They got a three-headed monster. Laviska Shenault might be the best player USC sees all year. He's that good as a wide receiver. And Stephen Mata is a veteran quarterback. And I love the McMillan, the running back transfer from Virginia Tech. So they're going to be good. Utah on the road, we just saw them go on the road to beat Stanford. That's going to be a tough road test. It's always tough to play in Salt Lake City. And Arizona State, they're a team that looks a lot better than I thought they would look. They've had some hard luck and they've lost some close games, but it's not going to be an easy stretch in October, and that's going to really determine, winning the Pac-12 South, you're going to have to beat a tough Colorado team, a tough Utah team, and what I think is going to be a pretty tough Arizona State team. Now, USC can run the table with those three, but they could go 1-2 or something against them too. So I don't know. I mean, that's it's going to be tough, but Utah was really impressed. They took a next step. This is a team that I picked to win the Pac-12 South this year because I thought they'd be the best on defense and best on special teams, which I think they still kind of are. Just offensively, they've been kind of bad. Now they look better. At least against Stanford, they look better. So we'll see how it plays out. But that's going to be a tough one in a couple weeks.
It all depends on every game is different. It's all scheme, and if you have a scheme that works against another team a lot better, then you'll play a lot better against that team. So. Every season when Washington State plays USC, you're like, oh, that could be dangerous because of the way that Clancy Pendergrass is, very aggressive defense versus, Mike Leach and his ability to kind of, pick apart defenses and find a weakness and attack that continually. So, that's it, kind of how it works out. And USC against Stanford, you feel like that's going to be a close game every year regardless. It doesn't matter what the talent levels are.
Same with Utah. Same with Utah. Yeah.
and especially going on the road. USC has not played well there. They've lost the last 2 times, I think. So,
Yep.
How are they going to respond this time when they go? It's going to be probably the rowdiest environment the rest of the season, I would say. I don't think anybody else on the schedule. Arizona State is at home, so Colorado's at home.
Yeah.
UCLA is not going to be a rowdy environment if it's anything similar to what we saw this last weekend.
Rowdy maybe because USC fans will be there.
I don't know.
Corvallis, maybe? Is that?
They have nothing else to do there. It's a very secluded pocket
They were pretty fired
community,
up.
so they usually get, especially if they feel like they're playing well, and that's a team that is growing. I think under Jonathan Smith they're growing. So maybe by that time of the season they feel like they have an opportunity, and it depends on how USC plays the next couple of games. Whether they, those if you feel like you have an opportunity to win against USC. Everybody's going to get rowdy and going to be excited about it. The players are going to be fired up that much more. When USC is going to go up there and be like, "Oh, we're playing Oregon State." And they'll act like they did in the Arizona game, like, "Oh, we're up 24 points in Arizona. Nothing else can happen in this game, can it?" Oh, wait. All of a sudden, it's a one-score game. It's much different. And USC will be lackadaisical about it. That's what their MO has become, is when they have an opportunity to put a game away, blow out a team, get all the freshman and sophomore players that don't get a lot of playing time, opportunities, it doesn't happen.
That's a key point too. Is that's what a lot of the USC fans on the Peristyle get upset about. It's not just the satisfaction of beating the crap out of teams that you should probably beat the crap out of if you look at the talent disparity. But really, that gives players an opportunity who normally don't get to play to come in. And we had Max Brown on Thursday. They should have blown out more teams than they did and given him more opportunities, and they never do. That's just always been something that happens with the USC. When you're not playing to that level, it's hurting your team because Alabama. They just play their starters for a first half. Their whole backup plays the second half of the game. Like, how invaluable is that? You can get all these guys that normally wouldn't play tons of playing time, so if someone does get hurt, they're ready to go.
Yeah, I mean, you look at a guy like Jalen Hurts, like, at USC, he probably would already transfer because he's not getting snaps. At Alabama, he's still getting snaps every game because Tua Tagovailoa and the first-string offense has been so dynamic that they're getting up by a large – I mean, they scored 65 points, I think, against the SEC defense this past week.
Was it Arkansas or something they played, I think?
Yeah, and, like, that was always the knock on the Nick Saban teams is, like, okay, well, they win. They're not going to put up a bunch of points, so they're going to be in some games. Now that offense is rolling. I mean, Tua has that group going. So you imagine, like, oh wait, remember when he was almost at USC? Like, so
I remember watching. It's funny. Just a side note. I remember watching him. Keely, I don't know if you were around, but like we would cover the LA, the Nike camp, the opening, the LA opening, and I remember filming him. I probably go back and look at the footage. I'm like, yeah, he was all right. Like he wasn't that good. He's definitely someone that got better. And then when he got to the Elite 11 stuff, and he progressed a lot. But when he came out from Hawaii, and maybe it was just like coming to the mainland and stuff, he just wasn't all that good. And I went out to, I think it was Jordan Iosefa and him were on the same team, right? Was he
I don't think they were on the same team.
Wait, no, who was at St. Louis with him?
I don't remember off the top of my head, but
I thought it was him. I don't know. We'll have to go back and look. But yeah, I mean, I've definitely covered the kid for a while, and just to see him progress, and he's obviously like really freaking good now.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the question I have, because Shotgun said, well, imagine if Tua was at USC. How much of that is Tua's talent plus development at Alabama versus, do you think Tua would have the same production value at USC?
No, it's definitely that. But the thing I was trying to point out is that Tua got reps last year. How many reps is Jack Sears going to get this year? How many reps has Matt Fink got the last 2 years as the backup? How many reps did Max Brown get as a backup? Those reps are invaluable for guys. Now, granted, a lot of times you're just handing the ball off as a quarterback. So for other positions, it's even more important. So getting C.J. Pollard in there at the end of the games, so he played someone on special teams, but if he gets an extra 10 plays a game, Hunter Echols got 10 plays last game. That was him being a part of a package. If he gets 10 plays because you have blown out a team, you're up by 30 points in the fourth quarter, that's invaluable reps, because then the coach can go to you, Kenichi Udeze can go to him, and Giant Anson can go, okay, this is what you did on this play. These are the, especially with the way they don't practice, one-on-ones, 1v1s in practice. You're not getting those full pad experience so those reps become invaluable in games. So it's things to teach off of. And sometimes USC doesn't have the opportunities to teach off because they can't get the offense going. They can't get that 3rd and 1. So suddenly, okay, well, we'll punt away. It's not a big deal because it's still 24-7. But suddenly you turn the ball over a couple times and it is a big deal.
Yeah.
And those are the things where if you pick up the 3rd down, you keep their defense on the field, you wear their defense down, that much more, and it's those cumulative things that USC's not getting to happen, and it's hurting the development of younger players at the same time that it's hurting this team because they're not putting games away in that regard too.
It's compounding.
Compounding.
Shall we go into questions?
Yeah.
Just a fair warning, our coding system is a little off, so I can't pull up your Facebook questions. I'll be reading it. That's why I'm looking down. But we have a question from Corey who says, I saw clips of Orgeron, his press conference after the LSU loss. He absolutely took responsibility for the loss. Could you ever picture Helton taking responsibility like that for a loss and then doing what it takes to make the changes necessary to correct the problems?
Well, the first part of the question, yes, it's my responsibility. I have to get these guys. They say that every time.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
He's not been as adamant or whatever about it. I think some fans would like, but he's not like he's avoided all kind
he's
of
not
stuff.
going to be as adamant as Ed Orgeron
at
about
anything,
anything.
Well, he's not going to have the drama. I think what some fans want is like, this is on me, this is going to
Yeah,
be fixed.
like James Franklin did that after
Yeah.
the Penn State, the loss to Ohio State.
Yeah,
And
James
Helton's
Franklin
not gonna-
also went after a fan before he went to that press conference. So how many times do you see Clay Helton doing that? That's
Probably
not
not
gonna
Well,
gonna
that's the
do
thing.
that.
You're not going to see Helton in a win or a loss be this high level
Right.
guy. He's even keeled no matter what. And
Unless
if-
he's yelling at the refs.
Sure, and yeah, when he yells at the refs, that's a whole different persona. But you're gonna see even keeled Clay Helton no matter what. And so, in winning seasons, is that much of a big deal? I don't think so. But when it comes to losing, I think
Yeah.
fans want more in that sense.
Yeah. I just want to compare them to, it's just not a, fair thing. I was rooting for Ed Orgeron too there.
Yeah.
They were top 5 in the country or something, and 5-0. We'll see. It's a tough stretch, man. They got to play Georgia next week, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
I
They
mean,
already have 2 top 10 wins, and now they're trying to get another one.
yeah,
That would have been another top 20 win if they would have beat Florida. I believe Florida was 18
they were
or
like
something.
22 or 18
okay.
or something. Yeah, but yeah, it's not easy sledding, and that's the other issue with USC is like you're not going through that sort of gauntlet of a schedule. Like, oh, you got Texas, they happen to be good this year. That's rough, but I mean, you feel bad for Orgeron.
Once
like,
you get in
we've gotta
conference,
play.
you don't have that gauntlet
Yeah.
schedule. USC's given itself that gauntlet outside of
Yeah, well,
conference,
I mean
and
Notre
people-
Dame and Texas are legit.
And
know.
you kind of debate, like, do you even need to do that?
But like LSU went and played Miami, and then they got all the top 10 teams that they're beating Auburn, playing against.
Of course, isn't every team in the SEC top 10?
Yeah,
according to the
there's some
rankings?
inflated rankings, but-
There's 8 teams in the top 25.
But they're playing Georgia and they're playing Alabama.
Those are
that's
legit.
like okay, like that's freaking ridiculous, So
Those are legit. But 8 teams in the
we
top
love
25.
Eddie O. We love Eddie O.
Top
And it was
8
cool that
teams.
like when we talked on Thursday, Max Brown was talking about it, how much they loved Ed Orgeron and stuff. So
True. Raj has a question. He says, any insight to what the big donors are saying about the coaching staff?
I mean,
Read
a
the
few
war
calls. Yeah, we got some stuff in the war room if you want to check that stuff. Some some sort of insider stuff of what's going on. There've been some feathers that have been ruffled. I mean, you hear a lot of stuff too, but there's definitely some smoke around.
We'll see.
USC fans just want to get back to the glory days. There were some miracle moments in USC football. I've been reading a lot of history lately. I've read this recently. You guys should check this out.
Wow.
This is like a mid-commercial in the middle of our thing. No, it's our buddy Dan Weber, our beat writer. So, miracle moments in USC Trojan football history. So check it out. He wrote the book. It's out on Amazon now. It was like the top sports football book or something. So definitely check it out. But you read stuff like that, and you're like, that's where a lot of the fans are coming from. They remember glory days, not just Pete Carroll stuff, the recent stuff, but like what it was like with John McKay and then John Robinson, and then it just went through a period of horrible coaches. And what I think the fans want to do is just they don't want to get that period of bad coaches to keep going, because it was like Ted Tollner and
Hackett.
and Robinson again and Paul Hackett, and it just there was just this bad stretch, and they don't want to see that happen again. So I think that's where a lot of the fans are coming from. You get that one coach that can just make things happen, like a Pete Carroll, and this team's set up for greatness.
It's true. We have a question from Jacob on YouTube who says, how was the morale of the team during the bye week? Is there any sign of the message that the coaching staff is giving them? Is it becoming stale to the players? Are your questions better, Jacob?
Yeah.
I didn't see that question. What that happened?
I mean, I don't think. I mean, we only saw 2 practices this week. They did 3, like we talked about before. But they practiced Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I don't think we've seen any kind of like stale message. There hasn't been any new. They've won the last 2 games, so
Yeah.
I know they didn't feel great about it, but I don't think there's been like 10 player-only meetings since then or anything. So I know fans are still outraged, but I don't think we're seeing the same sort of thing with the team.
Clay Helton said Cam Smith said about Clay Helton. He was asked about, what did he say after the team? He said you could see it in his eyes. He wasn't pleased. But one thing I love about Coach Helton is he always going to look at the bright side. But then he came to Cam Smith after, speaking to the team and said, we've got to go. We really need to start going. These next 2 weeks are going to be really big for us, talking about the bye week and leading into this Colorado game. And Cam Smith said to him, hey, Coach, we've got to have a sense of urgency. So that's we need to see that from this team, whether it be this week in practice or in the game on Saturday in some form or fashion. There needs to be that sense of urgency. That's what hasn't been there. That's what they need to do. They need to have more of.
Yeah.
We have a question from Brandon, who's specifically asking Shotgun, why don't we see USC going out for talent that Alabama targets? Or if we do, why aren't we getting them?
Well, USC goes after some of the similar talents. You look at a guy like Jerry Jeudy, the wide receiver. USC was in the mix with that one. Tua Tagovailoa is another one. Alabama tries to come out here and get some of the talent, but USC has a better foothold on the Southern California talent and stuff.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's some question marks, like why was USC not recruiting Jonah Williams more? I think his name is the tackle from Northern California.
Yeah.
Now USC doesn't have as much of a stronghold in Northern California as they do in Southern California, obviously, but in some other areas. But guys like Jay Tufele was recruited by Alabama, and you look at there's a bunch of guys every year that Alabama looks at, and then sometimes Alabama says, you know what, USC is probably going to get that one, so we're going to invest in a player down south. USC was involved with Dylan Moses before he went to Alabama. So there are some crossover there. You see Alabama usually, the guys they want to get in the south that USC is interested in, Alabama usually gets.
Yeah.
Guys in the West Coast that USC wants to get and Alabama also is interested in, USC usually gets. It's kind of it's part location, part proximity to players. That's a big thing. But they do go after some of the similar players. I mean,
Najee Harris was another one that they went after. But there was 2 5-star running backs in California that year. USC got one, Stephen Carr. Alabama got the other one. Back in the day, Ricky Town was an Alabama commit. And then USC switched him. So I think for USC,
Vianney Talmadeo was an Alabama commit.
Yeah, Vianney was.
Funny story. When I asked after the Holiday Bowl, when USC lost to the second one, whichever one was the second one, Wisconsin, I think. I asked him, the next game was going to be the Alabama game. I was like, Vianney, what is it going to be like to play Alabama when you committed there? He's like, oh yeah, I was committed there, wasn't I? He completely forgotten about it 3 years later. So that tells you how much early commitments mean as well.
Right.
But Juju Smith-Schuster also visited there. So there's been several players that both programs have been attracted to, and usually the proximity wins out to an extent.
There's a bunch of problems with this team. Recruiting head-to-head against Alabama is not one of them. So that doesn't happen all that often, and that's not the big problem you would need to fix.
Mandy says, I think USC has vets on the team, but they aren't as good as the young guys. Am I delusional to think next year's team will be better because they will have better players with less experience?
Are you saying the less they've been coached, the better they're going to be? Is that what we're saying here? There's some certain spot, losing guys like Marvell Tell is going to be very difficult. Cameron Smith, Porter Gustin. You see when Porter Gustin's not in the first half because of the targeting thing, they don't get any pass rush, and then he comes in and they have some. There's definitely some really talented veterans on this team that, now maybe there's certain spots. I don't know. The offensive line's going to look completely different, but they haven't performed that well. So maybe it's a thing where you put a bunch of young guys in and they play better. But to say that across the board, I don't agree.
Let's see.
No?
Sorry.
Do you agree? You think no?
It just depends on how. You look in college players is so much about what you do in the off season too. Is how much better you'll get. Playing time obviously is a big. Game experience is huge. But what you do in the offseason determines how much you can improve in a season. Now, I know Ryan's going to get upset, but let's look at basketball real quick. You look at basketball and how players under Andy Enfield have improved year to year, and it's leaps and bounds over what the players in the 5 years before that did under Kevin O'Neal and leading up to it. And that's all on it's not all on the players, but it's heavily on the players. and also the strength and conditioning staff and what they do in those off-season workouts. But basketball is more of an individual, you can shoot more yourself, but it's how much hard work you put in, how much effort you put in those workouts, those conditioning efforts, how many times you're going back for an extra workout, those type of things. So those young guys, they could take off and have really good careers, but how much are they going to be pushing the offseason? How much are they pushing themselves? How much is the culture of the team to push each other to a higher level? I mean, you look at Port Augustine. Port Augustine, obviously, everyone knows about the workouts and everything. Well, Port Augustine has a little tight group that follows him to the weight room. Like, oh, you're going to go work out again? Yeah.
He's like the Pied Piper of dumbbells or something.
True, but you look
made that up.
But you look at who's in that group. Ruben Peters, Austin Appleby. Hunter Eccles has been a guy that's done some extra stuff. And you see some of those young, Juliano Falanico, but where's the rest of the leaders on the defense? Where is the offensive lineman? Where is someone that is starting? Because those guys I just mentioned, none of those guys are starting. Now, maybe it's because they say, I need to get bigger, I need to get stronger. Right. That's my opportunity to start. And instead of some people are resting on their laurels like, that's not happening.
Yeah.
I'm already here as a starter. I mean, that's something that's got to be
Because the Dodgers hit a home run and you didn't
no, that was a replay from earlier.
Oh, okay.
Braves are leading 6-5.
Oh my god.
They threw a guy out at home and then also got out of the bases load jam.
Nice.
So.
Well, thanks for staying with us while the Dodgers get going on. And Sunday Night Football, too. So.
Dual screens, guys. Just get 2 screens. You're good.
Yeah.
We have a question specifically for Ryan.
Okay.
I think they're asking it in earnest, but it sounds like a troll question.
Okay.
He said, is USC practicing 2 full pad practices a week? They talked about getting more physical at practices after Arizona. What happened with that?
Okay, so no, they're not going to. No, I don't think they ever said. I think they've talked about, being physical, but never something like, hey, we're going to practice in pads. And I know, Keely, you were thinking during the bye week that you felt that they should have practiced. I'm not saying they shouldn't have.
I said they should have. Did I think they were actually going to do it? No.
But I think you were like, yes, I think there was some sort of like, they have to, right? Like you were kind of like, but we were like, the way they work. This was something that was planned in the off-season, in August. They weren't going to do that. That's just not Clay Helton's MO. I'm not saying that's the right way or the wrong way. We've seen, I said this before, I think Clemson practices similar, at least in the number of days and pads and things that USC does. Now, like teams like Georgia and Ohio State and Alabama, they practice more days and pads than USC does. So it's not like this is the only way to do it, but I know when you're seeing some of the, physicality being questioned that you would like to do that. And we've talked about it a zillion times, like just do it. They didn't have it planned this week. Wednesday, you're going to do full pads also. And what would that do? Like, be like, whoa, like just kind of put the brakes on it. It would get people's attention. Now, you don't have to tackle it on the ground and all that kind of stuff, but just to do that, I think would mix things up. That's really not this coaching staff's MO. They have their plan and they do it. They really don't deviate from the plan unless you like absolutely have to. But that's just not what they do.
Anon asks, should Clay Helton have fought harder for Bubba Bolden? If you look at other programs, some of their coaches fight for specific players. Should Helton have done that?
Specifically Nick Saban.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you hire a head coach who hasn't been a head coach before, someone that's kind of happy to be there, which if I was Clay Helton, I would be super happy to be there. He's not. Part of the reason they hired him was he's not going to be a guy that upsets the apple cart and does that. Now, if Pete Carroll was still there, and depending on what the infraction was, whatever it was, he might go to bat for him. And I'm not sure that Clay Helton would have that kind of power to do that, even if the player was like completely in the right or whatever. That's just part of it. Now, I don't know, maybe if Clay Helton sticks around for another year or 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever it is, then he feels more like he could do that. But I think at this point, it just seems like whenever we see it, even like Steve Sarkisian and Lane Kiffin, you would get more of an update. When it's a university matter, Clay's like, that's out of my hands, so it's not, and you don't get the feeling that he's like, well, what's going on with this guy? Well, let's see what we can do and fix this or get around it or whatever it is. I'm not saying get around it, but I just don't see that being part of his sort of personality. I think it would probably take him, I think he could get there, but it might take a little bit more time as being the head coach to do that. Where a guy like Saban or someone that's an established head coach who has their own power structure already, if he felt there was some sort of injustice, he would step in.
And the things that Nick Saban is usually sticking up for his players are things that are not injuring or affecting other players. It's gun charges or marijuana in the car, things like that, which are things you can run for. Not a sexual assault or
Right.
like armed robbery type of things.
That stuff's been, yeah. no.
Just like there's very few coaches that are going to stand up for players in those situations. If a player has been, Steve Alford did while he was at Iowa for the sexual assault. But besides that, it's very rare for those things to happen. Every once in a while it does, and then a lot of people are very shady about the coach then because like that, it's just not acceptable.
Then then it looks like you just want the player to play. You
Yeah.
don't care what he did. Like that's what. Yeah.
I mean, that happened in Washington and in Neuheisel several times with
Yeah.
Jeremy Stevens and different players. But
JFeezy8 says if USC loses to Utah, can they still win the South?
Okay, yes,
Yes.
because Utah already has 2 Pac-12 losses, but that would be a head-to-head thing. I think it's going to be tough. Utah already played Washington and Washington State when they went on the road to play Stanford. So that's a pretty rough opening of the Pac-12. They haven't even played a South team yet. Now they need a little help because Utah already has 2 losses, and that would be USC's second loss, and they would have the head-to-head. But yeah, they certainly could because Utah's schedule is like the toughest in the Pac-12 as far as like conference games. Like they miss. I think like Cal and Oregon State or something. So it's not easy for.
much tougher than missing Oregon and Washington this year, like USC.
Yeah. USC misses the 2 best teams basically
Yeah,
in the North.
USC has an easy schedule in comparison.
Yes.
In comparison. Ernesto says, why is Helton stuck in the sanctions frame of mind? He treats the players like kids who can't practice hard for fear of getting hurt.
I mean, I guess that's the theory is that he learned under Lane Kiffin and Steve Sarkisian basically during the sanctions era, and that's the kind of culture that was there. And I agree with you. I don't think you need that culture anymore. I think at the time you did. I think Lane Kiffin did some really smart things with the roster to try to fix with this horrible problem that was thrown into his lap by the NCAA. But that was then, and this is now. And I don't think I see a lot of that kind of mentality happening now, which I don't think you need it anymore. But that's the USC he kind of grew up in. When he came to SC.
A weird theory / question I have is
Okay.
like, after being under Lane Kiffin and Sark, do you think Helton wants to be a players type of coach that's always on their side and advocating for them to the point where he doesn't want to push them hard in maybe doing what's best for them? Like, hey, I know you guys don't want to do 2 full pad practices, but we need it. Like, is he missing that tough love standard because he's seen the other side of it where coaches lose the players?
I think at some point you got to realize, like, it's my job that's on the line. Now, it's their
Yes.
future. It's the players' future. You want them to do well in school. You want them to do well in football because it's their future. But it's also your livelihood on the line as a coach. So at some point you have to do what is best for the team because that is what will determine whether or not you keep your job or not what is best for the players' emotions, I guess.
Yeah, I think Clay Helton's true to himself. I mean, he learned from his dad, who was a longtime coach. I mean, the people around him, I think he has his own sort of philosophy. I think some of the roster management stuff, he's adapted from what he saw with Kiffin and Sark. But I think he's kind of his own person as far as that goes, as his own coach. But just some of the things that he's doing as far as like running the team, it seems like it's coming from a place where when USC was in the sanctions and they're not really there anymore. They don't act like a team. That's what the problem is. That has the most talent in the country, in the conference, and one of the most talented teams in the country. They don't seem to act like that. They're really worried about attrition and people getting hurt and things like that. And it's just the roster's back. They have 80 whatever guys on scholarship now. I think you could treat it a little bit differently. But that's his philosophy, and that's what he's going with.
The question, they had 26 players that missed practice or missed portions of practice on Wednesday. We talked about this, or Keely and I did earlier on our podcast. They did the same thing leading into our mock game week or leading into the season. They rested a lot of players. A lot of everybody was participating in that week. Worked out for them well because there was 1 or 2 injuries going into the regular season. Everyone else was healthy. And Clay Helton said this week, we are planning to play 8 weeks straight because they're expecting to play in the Pac-12 championship. So if that's the case, resting guys now and getting them healthy, and if they are healthy for that leading into that run, that's good. Now, the hard thing is balancing, like, do you try to get better do you try to do everything you can to get better, or do you do everything you can to get healthy?
Right.
And it's a hard thing to balance because, especially nowadays, it seems like the mentality is it's harder for players to play through injuries than maybe it was 20 years ago. So if you got a little hip flexor or something, like you don't feel 100%, then, with a lot of players, sometimes it's hard for them to work through that. Some players can, others can't. So you try to make sure that those guys are 100%. You try to make sure your entire offensive line, because they get nicks and they get rolled up on, those type things. Or you say, we need you guys to work better together. We got to go practice. We need to go full pads against a defensive line. And that's how you have to balance it. And USC has opted to go for the health. Now you'll see if they come out against Colorado and they look really, really fresh and they have a really good first quarter or first half, you're gonna be like, wow, their philosophy really worked.
Yeah.
You come out and you're like, well, they're still not physical at all, and Colorado runs right by them. You'll be like, wow, their philosophy doesn't work.
Right.
So it's hard to balance those two things, but that's what you have to do as a coaching staff. How do you balance getting better versus getting healthy at the same time?
I think there's definitely a lack of getting better throughout the season. I think Dan Weber talks about that. I think he talks about it with you, Keely, right, about this a little bit, where
Yes.
it seems like it's just you're maintaining throughout so you get I get as healthy as I want, I work out or whatever, and then for the rest, I'm not going to get any bigger or stronger. I'm just going to maintain for the next 3 months. And I think as a college football team, you have to grow each and every week. And it's hard to do that if you're not going to push players a little bit. And I know, so it is like a risk-reward sort of thing. But you see the way the team is playing, maintaining where you were probably wasn't the greatest thing. Like you need to get better than where you were. So if you did what you wanted to do during the bye week and you felt like you got better, that's great. But it seems like from the outside that it was more of, like you said, it was more of maintaining where you were, and where you were wasn't in the best place already. So you'd like to see the team work to get better. And if you're resting 26 guys, it's hard for those guys to get better.
I would have went full bore on the Tuesday. I'm talking like the hardest practice they've had all year, and then I would have said, okay, you guys maybe even off till next Wednesday, till this week's Wednesday. Like you give them a full week then, and to heal up whatever guys need to. But they needed that really tough practice. I thought, hey, maybe we'll see it on Tuesday.
Yeah.
We don't think we will see it, but maybe we will.
I think if you're going to have that many days off, guys go home, at least just leave a taste in their mouth of, boom, we hit hard. It's a physical practice.
Yeah.
But it's not their mentality. My high school team, we worked out on Friday mornings. Now, it wasn't like a...
You get to the game and you're like,
yeah, it wasn't a max day or anything.
Yeah.
But we worked out. So when we went into that game on that Friday night, it was like we felt like we were stronger than the other team. Now, that was just completely mental because mentality-wise, because it was 16 to 18-year-olds, and you'll believe that. They're like, yeah, we worked out. We're stronger than these dudes now because we worked out today. But it was a light workout. But our coach, that's what he believed in, is like putting us through something that day just so we had that mental edge on the teams we were playing. And I don't think this team has anything similar to that.
Yeah.
They don't have anything where it feels like, well, we're better, we're bigger, we're stronger than this team, or whatever it may be, because of what we've done. We got better athletes because of how we were born.
yeah.
How we were born. We have a question from Ben who says, how much should you know? Oh, hold on. Hey, this is a bad question. How much should I talk to my friend from Notre Dame? Talk up my friend from Notre Dame this year. We are both, shall we say, braggadocious, but I'm worried that I'm going to be shamed this season. Basically, preview Notre Dame.
I would block
so
them
far away.
on social media. Yeah, don't talk any trash.
If Ian Book gets hurt, that's a completely different team.
Yes,
So it's
They are
very difficult to
legit
talk about a
playoff.
game in 2 months.
right. But they're a legit playoff contender
Talking
right
sense.
now. So
It's the same thing with all the questions like who should they hire
Yeah.
as the coach? Well, they could still have a coach,
Right.
so
Yeah,
Don't
Lordy
pre-talk
knows.
trash. I would save yourself the time and don't pre-talk trash Notre Dame. See what happens. We had a Periscope one. Sorry, I've been watching Periscope, but it's from Danielle Silva. Has Lynn Swan been more visible recently?
No.
No, he has not.
well, he did show up to a practice, which seemed strange for him. He was at the
done,
Arizona
Lynch.
game. He did not look very happy at the Arizona game. He was on the sideline with Tim Tessalone,
Yeah.
where I was stationed for shooting photos at part of the final 5 minutes. So he didn't look very happy with what was going on. So
He's
But who
not
did
a very-
at
He
USC?
wasn't there during the bye week.
Pat Hayden was more of a way to kick the camera.
I did what I could.
Pat Hayden was definitely more of
That was an earthquake.
an
right?
outreach sort of athletic director. Now, both Pat Hayden and Lynn Swan never have done this before. Pat Hayden was definitely more of a, he could get out and schmooze and do all those things. I mean, he was doing that before. Lynn Swann is not really like that. He's more Mike Garrity, where it's just like you're kind of doing your thing and, don't talk to the media all the time and stuff like that. So, no, he's not really been all that visible. So I know people would like to hear from him, but we don't see him around that much.
Trek Ranger says, he says, defensive coaching. We've been terrible statistically the last 2 years. Why are we not talking about this more?
Because they haven't been terrible the last 2 years. There's been good and bad, right? Like
It's a feast or famine defense.
Yeah.
And they led the nation in sacks, but they also gave up explosive plays at the Yang. And it becomes compounded because the offense can't put teams away. So it feels like the defense is always under pressure.
Yeah.
So maybe you notice the mistakes a little bit more than you do. Like if it's 65, whatever, 31 or whatever that Alabama score was, then you give up a late deep ball. Like, okay, well that happens because that's a backup who's in there versus, okay, well it happens in the Colorado game and now they're back in the game. So there's a little bit more pressure, a little bit more attention, I think, on that. The defense hasn't been great. They have to get more pressure. They've tried with different things. I think the back seven has been pretty good.
Yeah.
They haven't given up a bunch of big plays.
Dylan Marshall's played a lot better this year.
Yeah, he's played really well. Marvell Tell's played really well. They've given up some touchdowns, but those were like 30-yard touchdowns instead of like the 80-yard touchdowns that they were giving up last year. So they have been beat a couple times deep, but it's within the scoring opportunity zone rather than from the other side of the field, I think. So I think the defense has played pretty well. I mean, they gave up 20 points in the second half of this game, but a lot of that was based on the offense.
20 total points to Arizona. It's like you're on the road, 20 total points.
20 points and a half sounds a lot worse.
Yeah,
but it was
that's
also
all they gave up, And they only gave up 17 to Stanford. Now, Stanford took their foot off the gas because USC couldn't score. Like, sometimes the USC terrible offense has helped the defense because Stanford would have scored more points if they needed to, but they didn't need to. So they just ran Bryce Love, and that, like I said, that's the only time all year he's had more than 20 carries and more than 100 yards. But I think in general, it's like I like the scheme. I feel like it's pretty good a lot of the times, and there's good and bad to it. But I feel like there's more of an identity on the defensive side than the offensive side.
Do you feel like the expectations for the defense are fair given I feel like there's a little bit of a roller coaster of experience because you have on one side Marvell Tell and then you have Talanoa Hufanga, or you have Porter Gustin, but then you have Jay Tufele, or you have guys who have veteran experience, and then you have guys who are playing in their first season. So how do you mix, when you have a mix of experience like that, how do you have a certain level of expectations for the team?
Well, that's usually what you want to have. You want to have constantly be bringing up those young guys and allowing them to work with the older guys at the same time, because the other option is if you have a really veteran side of the ball, offense or defense, and they all graduate in 1 year, you're going to be really bad the next year.
Yeah.
So you want to be working those younger guys in and giving them opportunities. Now, do they have to start like Talanoa? Maybe you don't want that. But you want to be able to work them in at the same time. The thing with the defense is when they get pressure, they're a completely different defense. So that means when Porter Gustin is in the game, it's a completely different defense because he's been getting pretty consistent pressure. I don't know how many sacks he has currently this year, but
It's like 5.5, I think. Or something.
which is pretty crazy considering he's missed 3 halves basically.
Yeah.
And those are the 3 halves where teams have played really well. He missed most of the second half against Arizona. He played a little bit in the third quarter, but he's not really effective. And Arizona scores 20 points. He missed the second half of Texas. Texas run away with the game. He missed the first half of the Washington State game. They would score like 5 million first half points. So you see when they get pressure, it's completely different. Now, do some of those young guys start applying some pressure too and taking the pressure off of Porter Gustin at the same time?
No pun intended.
Yeah, no pun intended there. But if that started happening, then I think the defense is only going to show more and more as the season progresses. Whereas the offense, that's where the questions really are.
It's tough. Lack of pressure, lack of turnovers, and some of that's kind of like they've defended a lot of passes and not getting any interceptions off it. They got one in this last game, and the second one called back. But I think you need that too. So if they get a few more turnovers, I think you feel better about the defense. It's not really been there. They haven't got as many sacks. They haven't got as many turnovers, and that's gonna show.
Ben Albert has a great question. If the team keeps losing, do you think they could open up Little Galen to the entire student body? Those omelets are bomb, and if the team isn't winning, why should they get the special privilege? They also have outstanding smoothies and power shakes. He said, for someone who's not great at meal prep, this would be a great addition to the USC experience. But apparently it's only for people who run 4.2s. I have to agree, Ben, because those omelets are bomb.
Well, I went to school with Ben. He's wrong. Little Galen is open to students at a certain hours.
That's not a good time.
Okay, but it's still open.
Barely.
Okay. Yeah.
Good
Get
question,
your facts
Ben.
right, Ben.
I was in there for like recently. They had like a video game showing or something like Black Ops. I don't know, some Call of Duty thing, and all the players were lined up. They brought like computers in, and everyone was playing the games against each other and stuff. And it was pretty funny. But then I got to eat there. Man, it was good. Like there was they had like some kind of ice cream cookie sundae bar or something, and I made
Brian's
like
all
some.
about that.
Yeah, I was like, holy cow, this
Wow.
is great stuff.
I remember watching the Boise State Oregon game where LeGarrette Blount tried to knock out somebody.
Oh, you're right. In
Post
there
game,
watching
in
it.
there
Yeah.
watching that first game of the season.
We have reached the 8 p.m. mark. We'll get some rapid fire questions
Okay.
in. Dennis says, with the Titans being non-existent the past couple of years, do you guys think it will hurt top Titans committing to USC? Look at this class, Dennis. You have not one, but two tight ends committed.
And they're
So,
both really good,
Yeah.
especially Drew Wolf. I think since he slimmed his body down, has looked really good this season. USC missed out on Colby Parkinson, so that was
was
gonna,
a big one.
and that was going to be really tough for them because he was Stanford all the way. So that's really the only guy they've really missed on recently. I would
Yeah.
say the biggest miss for them tight end wise is Caleb Wilson, who was at
They
USC.
had him.
Okay,
and-
but that's a particular situation where his dad got fired. So
He still would have stayed if they had offered him a scholarship.
Yeah,
I would have
he
found a
was a
scholarship
walk-on,
for that.
yeah.
Because we saw in practice that he was a pass catching threat. The question was, could he grow into being a blocker? You've seen it at UCLA, especially at the beginning of last year. He was one of the highest rated players in the country before he got hurt last year. Now, granted, it's a small sample size. He only played 3 or 4 games last year before getting injured. But he was one of Josh Rosen's favorite targets.
Yeah.
And was killing it. And
In
instead,
that Texas A&M game, he had like 200 yards.
yeah,
or
as a
something.
tight end.
Yeah.
And you look at USC, and they haven't had the real.
He was at USC. Like, yeah.
And part of it is also the scheme they're running. They haven't really, attacked with the tight ends. I think Max Brown talked about this on Thursday with you
Yeah.
guys that he would like to see the tight ends farther down the field. Maybe it was you,
Yeah.
rather than seeing the
Max
short
agreed with
throws.
me, but it was me. Yeah,
I got you.
yeah. But they did that a little bit more. You saw Josh Follow getting down the field, and he ended up fumbling. But I didn't. I was like, I wasn't. Why were they throwing these little
Well, no, the
2-yard
one he
pitches?
fumbled on was a 5-yard out.
Okay.
Now, he caught a 34, 42-yard pass that was a really nice throw from JT Daniels getting over the second level of defenders. He lofts it just enough over the guy jumps up, can't get to it, and there was an opening there. Now, I don't know if maybe they're fearful of those type of throws with a young quarterback. That could be it because those are very touch-sensitive throws. If you throw it too high, you can throw it to a safety. You throw it too low, linebackers underneath to undercut it.
Yeah.
So those are difficult throws, but those are the throws that can really advance an offense and can attack a defense, especially if you're getting cover 2. Or I think in that situation was a one-high look. So the the linebacker was a little too low on it, and because of that, they were able to get it over, get a block on the outside, and you get a really big chunk gain. So do we see more of that? They haven't really shown that. So.
No.
Whether that's now you saw that 2 years ago,
Yeah.
but
Daniel
that was with
Motorbebe,
Daniel
yeah.
Motorbebe, and he was able to do some different things than the current group of tight ends has been doing. And until if they get him back,
Yeah, I think they can be effective. Just it doesn't have to be huge chunk plays, but just 10 yards down the field, just something vertical. When they're running like 2 yards and going out, and they're running sideways to the line of scrimmage, it just doesn't seem like these guys are at maybe Josh Follow, but catching the ball and then turning around, expecting Tyler Petit to like catch the ball, turn around and run and beat a bunch of guys. It just doesn't seem like. Just have him be 15 yards down the field, sit down in the zone or something, and hit him with a chunk. It's like that's fine, but.
Facebook's having a little fun. They're saying they're like USC just got another penalty on a bye week, so they're having a little fun in the comments. Brody Boy Ryan wants you to.
Brody Boy.
I know. He says, why won't Clay Helton admit that there's a problem with his offensive scheme and the lack of toughness/physicality? Admitting there's a problem is the first step to recovery and fixing what's broken.
Well, I think you said it in your question. You can look at it from your point of view, and not just you, many people's point of view, that there's a problem on the offense. Or you can look at it from his point of view, saying that, well, this offense, the same one, won the Rose Bowl, won the Pac-12, and still controls their own destiny to win it again this year. So I think at this point, that's what, he's more of a positive person. He's more of, this is my philosophy. And it's not all hope isn't lost. Even though many USC fans are on the peristyle and the way we talk about it, like many feel that all hope is lost. But this team is talented enough to pretty much overcome almost anything, and they could make a run and get back and win the Pac-12 and do all those kind of things. So I don't think until that is off the table, you're going to see Brody Boy some sort of like, hey, you know what? We're going to change this. We're going to change that. And I don't even know if they would happen during the season. Like, say they lose 2 of the next 3. I don't think Clay Helton's going to come up and say, you know what? I'm going to change my offensive philosophy. Like, he's not going to say that. Maybe after the season something would happen, but I don't see him changing anything like that.
That's not something you see during the middle of the season. Even if you do it after the season, then you kind of get a UCLA situation where they completely flip their offense, and then they didn't have the guys that were prepared for the pro-style offense that they wanted to try to switch to in Morris last year. So that becomes a difficulty. I think USC's offense, and Brody, I think you pointed it out on one of the threads, is that there's a lot of plays.
Yeah.
Oh, we're that close. Oh, if we would have got that block. Oh, there's so many of those where it's like, if you just got out a little bit farther or whatever it is, where it's small things, where it's one block, and there could be a 3-yard gain turns into at least 7, if not 15, if not 30, based on, because then you get to running back against the safety, and you like those odds with Stephen Carr, and Akasika whereby being able to break a tackle, those type of things. But there's so many times where it's like, if you just move over, get that block right there. There's just things like that where it makes it difficult as a play caller and as an offensive coach. You're like, why are we not? Why? Man, it was right there. It was right there for us, and we couldn't get it done. So there's those things that are happening. You're not going to see a complete offensive overhaul. That's not going to happen.
No.
And to talk about what's the problem with it, or this offense is a problem. Like, is it though? Because this is the same offensive principles that you see at Oklahoma State or Oklahoma, any of these spread teams that are putting up 60 points in a game. Now, if you want to debate whether this is the same offense as even Alabama, they have a lot of the same principles.
Yeah.
Are they doing the same things? That's what you have to start self-scouting and comparing to other teams that have similar offenses. And USC's not getting those little things that lead to the big chunk plays that some of these other teams are.
But Brody, I get your point, and like you look at what Oklahoma was a top 5 team, right? And they end up losing to Texas, and they fire Mike Stoops. Like that's a first-year head coach. I like that kind of thing. It was like, hey, you know what? We're doing something that's working. I don't see Clay Helton. That's just not really in Clay Helton's personality to do something like that. So maybe there'd be a change later, but I don't see something like that happening where you see Texas giving up, you give up 48 points to Texas, and he's like, I'm done, you're done, and I'm out of here. And he's making a change. It's like, wow, that's a huge move.
Also a little bit different when you've inherited a defense coordinator versus when you've hired a defense coordinator and Clancy Pendergast, Clay went out of his way to go get him.
Right.
And, the offensive line coach is Clay's quote uncle, semi-uncle, faux uncle. The special teams coach is a guy that he thinks is one of the best in the country. These are all guys he handpicked. The only one he didn't handpick was maybe Ronnie Bradford. That was kind of like he came with Clancy. If I remember correctly, as far as the hirings, like every other one has been Clay's gone out and searched and got these guys. It hasn't been like, Justin Wilcox was still here, and now he did that. He already did that. He got rid. Okay, well, we had Justin Wilcox for 3 games or what it was as an interim coach, and then he signed on, and he got rid of him. This is a completely different situation. I know people have pointed out earlier, like, Oklahoma's doing it. It's a different situation.
But he had him for the full. He kept him for the season. It's not like
and maybe
it was an interim thing where he had to make a decision.
But he was already on the staff. It's not like he went out and hired Mike Stoops and said, hey, I love your brother. He gave me this job. I'm going to go hire you and bring you in. No, he was already on the staff, and now he's like, maybe last year there was times when he was like, I don't know about this, but Baker's making it okay because we're scoring 49 points and they're scoring 35, and then suddenly you lose a game the next year, and it's like, okay, this is it. I can't take it anymore.
Yeah.
Maybe he got to the breaking point.
If he didn't like it at the end of the season, he could have got rid of, he
could have.
Yeah, but.
Maybe he put out feelers and didn't feel like there was the right situation. I don't know.
Yeah.
Feelers. Alrighty, I think we could end it on that.
I got all these questions over here from YouTube. You start stealing my YouTube questions. Jeez.
Don't watch the game,
Sorry.
and then I won't steal your questions.
I was pulling up all the questions and putting them in a document.
Marty's like, why do they make so many mistakes? Marty, that's a great question.
It's a good question.
There was a discussion about, does USC have the potential to beat anyone?
To beat anyone?
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Anyone on their schedule? I think so.
Yeah.
I think they could beat that Notre Dame team. I think their talent is there.
Yeah. Because the players are there. The players are what you see. It's just how you put them together and the product on the field. The product on the field hasn't matched what we feel the talent is, and that's why I like doing the story today where the chart, it's not just about recruiting classes. It's if you lost all your 5 stars, then they're not on the roster anymore. These are the guys that are still on the roster, and you can't tell me every 4-star out there is overrated and blah, blah, blah. So, that's, who are the guys that are performing the best? Like, there are guys that were ranked really high. So that should tell you something.
Who is the team motivator? Seems like there's no one to get these kids to believe in themselves. And also, a little bit related, Richard asked a couple times who's USC's strength and conditioning coach. It's Ivan Lewis. There's also a couple, 3, 4 different assistant strength coaches. So who's the team motivator? A lot of times that is the strength coach at some schools. Ivan Lewis is not necessarily the in-game motivator. That's more, you see KB, Thump Belton, great name. Thump Belton, the assistant strength coach. You see Brad, is it Brad? So
Is this from a coaching perspective? Who's the
I think
motivator?
so. Well, it could be team or player. I mean, coach or player. But a lot of times it is the coaching staff. The strength staff.
Yeah.
Those are guys that, because they don't really have a job during the game besides being one of them is assigned as the get back coach. All right, everybody get back.
That didn't work in the Arizona game.
Did not work. Somebody did not get.
Well, okay, so Nansen is Helton's get back guy, and Nansen was the one who ran into the ref. So Nansen needs a get back guy for
That's
his
supposed to
own
be the
get
strength
back.
coach. Somebody's got to be get back. But then the other strength staff are usually the guys who are like waving the towel. That like Thump picked up Velus Jones after the big block on the Alka-Cedric, where like lifted him up and carried him around. So those are the type of guys that are motivating. But I feel like maybe they need somebody else. I don't know what exactly it is, but it seems like the sideline can get very quiet and very.
Yeah, there's not as many fiery personalities on the team in general, from coaches to players. It's just there's not as many of those, and I don't know. It's just, it's not like the talented players, but just sometimes you get guys that aren't the most fiery.
Do you remember when I think it was a UCLA game? Juju got into it with like Damian Mama on the sideline. Like
Really?
That's okay. That's okay to happen. That means that the people are passionate and want things to get better when things aren't going well. Now, if you're throwing blows, that might be different. But you're yelling at each other and have to be separated. That's fine.
Yeah.
I guess so. Yeah. Michael says, is this Helton's offense or is it T's? Can anyone describe to me what our offensive philosophy is? I don't see a philosophy, regardless of whose offense it is. The problem is whoever is calling the plays.
Apparently, we're not ending. Okay.
Sorry, that was the last question.
That's okay. No, it's Clay Helton's offense. It's not like T. Martin came in with his playbook. They were all part of the same staff. It's all mishmashes of Kiffin and Sark and all that kind of stuff. So it's, there's no outside source that came in. They didn't, come off the Hal Mummy, tree of the area. None of that stuff. This was all this in-house conglomeration of all the different offensive minds that were there with Kiffin, Sark, and Clay and T. So that's what you got.
Come on, guys. Their philosophy is balance.
Balance is the philosophy.
Balance.
We did get to play the clip last show from Mike Leach. It was funny.
We did. JFizzy8 says, question for Ryan. I'm trying to get into journalism and I want to be your intern. Keely, don't player hate. Please ask the question. So, not player hating. I asked your question, JFizzy.
Here's what I tell a lot. So we get a lot of that stuff. Like Gerard Martinez has been with me for like 15 years. You know where we found him? He was on the message board. So I think the first thing you want to do, get on the Peristyle. Get on USCfootball.com. Post, read, put your thoughts in there. And that's where I think you can get some really good experience. But send me an email. We'll check it out. But I tell that to 90% of the people, or I tell it to everybody, and 90% of the people that say they're really interested in doing this, they don't want to be bothered doing that. So if you can't be bothered posting on the message board, then you probably don't have a passion for this. That's where the people with passion for this live. So go there and you'll find out.
There you have it. Any final thoughts? Shotgun, you look like you're about to
I will
something.
rapid fire these. Is there any concerns about the elite offensive alignment out west choosing other schools? No, USC is still in contention for a lot of them. If I was to bet I had $100 and I'm going to Vegas this weekend, do I bet the spread, if I'm tight on gas money coming back? Ryan.
You bet against USC. It's
Not
a
to cover.
7-point spread. Yes.
So-
Take Colorado +7.
So USC will
all
probably
day.
win by 6 because that's what they do. They get real close. Which game do you see USC's home game winning streak being snapped?
Could be this weekend, but Notre Dame for sure.
Probably Notre Dame. I'm new to the Inside Troy online community, but for the past 2 years there, have there always been this many people complaining about firing Clay Helton, even after the Rose Bowl and Pac-12 championships? There have been people complaining, not always this many.
It's very loud, very vocal right now, and it's, yes.
Also, welcome to the
Running backs like Carr are dual threat guys. Why won't they run any wheel or receiving routes with them? That's kind of been a question mark this year because you saw
Why
Ronald
not?
Jones do that last year on something.
And he's not very good at catching the ball.
You saw Stephen Carr being used over the middle in the Texas game. It seems like some of those routes have disappeared in this group, and maybe it's because of the emergence of Amon-Ra St. Brown in the slot, and they've been wanting to use him more. I don't know exactly what the reason is for that, but you haven't seen it as much.
No.
And last one, that was the ominous question. We already got that.
Last
Ominous
one,
or not?
someone asked, will they practice this week? Yes, they
They're
will.
going to practice. There's a plan. They plan to practice in August, so they're going to practice. So
It's true.
they follow the plan. They're not going to deviate from that plan.
Stick to
I
the
rapid
plan.
fired, and I'm proud of
pretty good.
myself.
Rapid fire. All right, that's going to wrap it up for a special bye-week edition of Tunnel Vision. That's Shotgun Spratling. That's Ryan Abraham. I'm Keely Eure. We will see you on Thursday at noon previewing Colorado. It'll be a good matchup for USC, but we'll see